There's only two things libertarians can agree on. One is that taxation is theft, and two, that we want a free Ross.
Like that sentence, unbelievable sentence of double life plus 40 years without parole for a first-time nonviolent offender. Felt like I was fighting such a big monolith, It was how do you fight this? They're so powerful, they have all the money they need, they have everything they need, or fulfill your sentence, however it is. Which would you pick? And they 100% of them said, give me the torture, bring on the flogging. I really do attribute liberty-loving people and the libertarians to Ross being free.
Welcome back to the Try Liberty podcast. This is Stephen Akela, and I am joined by Lyn Ulbricht. Lyn Ulbricht is a prominent criminal justice reform advocate and the founder of the Free Ross campaign, which sought clemency for her son, Ross Ulbricht, the creator of the Silk Road Marketplace. Since her son's arrest in 2013, Lyn has become a leading voice in the liberty community on issues related to sentencing reform, government overreach, and digital freedom. Through years of public speaking, media appearances, and grassroots organizing, Ulbricht helped build a broad coalition advocating for clemency and criminal justice reform. As the founder of Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing, she has brought national attention to concerns about proportional sentencing, due process, and the expanding power of federal prosecution in the digital age. And she's also our keynote speaker at the Libertarian National Convention on Saturday, as well as a breakout session that morning. So buy your packages if you're going to attend the Libertarian National Convention. Lyn, thanks you so much for being on today.
Thanks for having me.
So I don't know if you remember this. This was back in 2016 when I first became an LNC member, and we had our first meeting at Freedom Fest in Las Vegas. And I remember meeting you there, and you were attending, this was a decade ago, advocating for your son's clemency. And a decade later, you've achieved that, and it's an amazing story. It's a story of family, of love, and of freedom. And I want to go back to the early days and talk about what happened and what got you to get on the national stage and really start advocating for your son and eventually getting him freed, which is an incredible story.
What got me out there talking about it and all of that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How did this all start? How did you get on the road, and what was this process like to decide to get out there and really start advocating?
Yeah, well, it all came as a big shock that Ross had been arrested and accused of wild things. As far as I was concerned, it was so unlike him, and so I was just shocked. We got a call from Reuters, and the woman on the other end of the phone just filled me in, and I'm like, this, and all of a sudden, I turned on the TV, like, what's going on? And George Stephanopoulos was saying, congratulations, you got your man. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I'm like, don't we have trials and things like that here? I mean, don't we want to prove things, But anyway, suddenly there was all of these cameras going by our little house, and our neighbors freaking out, and people, it just was a deluge of just very suddenly. And friends too, friends were like, we're praying for you. I can't believe this. And I'm like, wow. And completely out of the blue. So the next day, it's kind of like when something very shocking happens, like a death or something like just unbelievable thing. I started waking up the next morning, and I just kind of was like, la, la, la. And then I'm like, oh my God, what happened? It's like I woke up into what I thought was normal. And then suddenly I remembered. And I thought, they're lying about him. I've got to say the truth for him. I've got to defend him. And I got a hold of a friend of his from high school who knew enough about the internet and to put up a one-page website. And I just wrote who Ross is and who Ross isn't, and put it up there because I felt I needed to defend him. There were lies about who he was. And that was kind of the beginning of me speaking out. And and then later, I got an opportunity to speak at PorcFest. That was in November, what I just related. And then the following spring, it was South by Southwest in Austin. I went there and met a bunch of people who were very supportive, and just was putting up posters, just trying to talk to people, get them to listen to me. And slowly I started getting attention and different friends. Luke Radowski was the first person to interview me on the street. I was like, what, what's going on? And just a lot of libertarians and freedom people who knew about Silk Road, knew about Ross, were coming to me and saying, hey, we want to help you. And then PorcFest, a friend who owned Brave New Books in Austin, Harlan Dietrich, wrote me and said, hey, this is after I'd left Austin, and said, hey, I'm going up to New Hampshire to this festival, Porcupine Freedom Festival. I'm going to hand out, sell t-shirts that he was making to raise money for you. And I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to meet you up there, because I was living in New York at the time to be near Ross. And he goes, no, you should speak. And I was like, what? No, I can't do that. And he goes, no, you should. I know the people, the organizers, I'll call them. And then they got back to me and said, sorry, our speaker thing is full. We can't do it. And I'm like relieved. I'm thinking, oh, phew, I don't have to do this. And they got back to me the next day and they were like, never mind. We want you. We want you in the main pavilion. We want you on Saturday night, the most busy time. I was like, oh my God, please help me. I don't know. And that was really kind of when I started speaking publicly. And Nick Gillespie of Reason was in the audience, and he said, hey, I want you to come on my show. And one thing led to another. Deep Web, which was a Alex Winters documentary, came out, and different things, different people wanted me to be involved. And I got to where, wherever I could help Ross and speak out for him, I did. So it just kind of snowballed and became a big thing. And yeah, I mean, if you're out to save somebody, you gotta make some noise, so people care and pay attention.
And
So
I think it definitely worked. It seems like the freedom movement was definitely behind Ross all the way. Been a huge focal point, as a matter of fact, as far as where we're concerned with criminal justice. He was really the poster child.
Right.
And when he was released, we're all relieved. When did it feel like you were starting to get traction? Was there ever times when it felt like things weren't moving as quickly as you'd like, or when did it really feel like this is going to happen, this is happening, things are moving up to where they need to be?
Well, there were a lot of hopeful times. There was a lot of very big disappointments, like that sentence, unbelievable sentence of double life plus 40 years without parole for a first-time nonviolent offender. It was shocking. It was a death sentence, essentially. And that was pretty rough to get that. And felt like I was fighting such a big monolith, It was, how do you fight this? They're so powerful. They have all the money they need. They have everything they need. And I just knew I had to do it, and really one of the things, and I'm not remembering the exact year. I remember it very, very clearly. Was the Libertarian Party came out and said publicly to the president, we are behind you pardoning Ross Ulbricht. This was way back. I should have looked up the date, but I shall for my keynote. But and I couldn't believe it, that the Libertarian Party officially, unanimously, and I was like, I didn't know they did anything unanimously, right? It was like, oh my God, it's unanimous, all these people, and are behind me, are behind us, our family. And it just, I really felt so uplifted by that. And of course, all the support that we've gotten from freedom-loving people, libertarians, and the crypto community too, although there's a lot of overlap there.
Mhm.
And just people who care about freedom and fair trials and all of that. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster up and down, but having you all support has been, got me through it, got Ross through it. A lot of it felt very lonely, like, in front of the computer, and but I knew I wasn't alone. And yeah, so it was a roller coaster, but that was really a turning point when the Libertarian Party did that. And yeah, it was great.
There's only two things libertarians can agree on. One is that taxation is theft, and two,
Yeah.
that we want a free Ross.
Yeah, I
So
agree with both. Yeah.
So what was it like? When did you find out? When did you know that Ross was going to be freed? And what was it like walking out of the prison and being brought back?
I'm sorry, brought back
To your family. Yeah, picking him up, getting brought
Yeah.
out. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
what was that
Yeah.
moment like for you?
Oh,
In those days that led up and the days after of,
years.
finally getting exoneration and
Yeah.
being free. That's got to be huge.
Yes, absolutely. And I learned not to get too hopeful about different phases because it's crushing when it doesn't work out. And there were times when, I was just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? I can't. And then I just was like, okay, I'm going to do the next thing. I'm just going to keep doing the next thing, take one day at a time and do what I can do that day. And it was 11 and a half years of that. But I also knew that there was no way I was going to not do it until he was out. I wasn't going to, until I died. Essentially, I just thought, I'm just going to keep going. I do believe it was God inspired. I believe that God was in this, and I have, that faith, and I think that I know that really gave me strength. Sometimes a lot of prayer around the world for him, and yeah. So when I had heard word that, because up until when President Trump pledged on the Libertarian stage that he was going to commute Ross's sentence to time served and bring him home, that was a big moment. That was a huge moment. Of course, he hadn't won the election, but that was an enormous moment. And I, because by the way, his being pardoned later, we weren't expecting a pardon. That was just
Really?
no. When he said we'll commute the sentence, which is amazing, but it's not the same as a pardon. So it still would be, we would have been so happy. But so that was a huge moment. And the libertarians and all the people attending, every major media photo of that event had free Ross signs in front of Trump, and he was standing above. It was just so moving, and so just, you cry right now. It was just so amazing to have that support. And so yeah, and then he reiterated it at the cryptocurrency conference, the Bitcoin conference, I should say, in Nashville a few months later. Said it again, I want to reiterate my pledge. And everybody went crazy there too. So I really do attribute liberty-loving people and the libertarians to Ross being free.
That means a lot.
I do. Oh no, I mean, I don't really, I can't imagine that it could have happened without that.
Well, I know we had our signs. I had mine, and certain things Trump would say. There was some boos, there was some yays, but the biggest, loudest applause was when he said he was going to free Ross. I think that was something that we all united on, and there was probably some confused MAGA people in the room too. Who's this Ross guy? What's going on here? Maybe they went home and looked it up, and
That's right.
But it was a moment. It was a very interesting moment. And I think that was the promise, and he, to Trump's credit, he came through on that promise, and we're very thankful for that. We're very thankful for that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it sounds
I just would add, I do think it was the sentence. It's outrageous
Yes.
cruel, horrible sentence from that judge that really helped. It really helped. Trump mentioned it. Actually, I got to meet him and he mentioned it to me. He said, I can't believe that sentence. I just can't believe it. And also to Charlie Kirk, who had been
Yes,
working
God
for
rest in
us.
peace. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And that, that sentence, he couldn't get over it. And yeah, so ironically, it actually, I think, helped.
And I'm assuming most of our listeners know the story, but of course, just to circle back, Ross, of course, was arrested for building a website, a website where peaceful people could, exchange goods and things like that. And I think the biggest cocaine dealer on the Silk Road got like a 6-month sentence or something like that. It was,
Blank on their sentences. They were
yeah.
short, way
They were
short.
very short. They were very short, and essentially the judge threw the book at him because this was this new thing, which had not been done before, and of course they wanted to turn it into a spectacle, which I think is what they were trying to do, is disproportionate, insane for not even for simply building code. It's not a crime, and just absolute insanity. So to see Ross free once again is a long time coming. Now,
Yeah.
I understand he's got a fiance. Is that correct? I don't know if he's married.
He's a wife.
His wife.
He's married.
Wonderful.
But
Excellent.
before we move on, I just wanted to mention, God, now I forgot. You were talking and I was not talking.
Sorry.
No. It's good what you were saying, and I was going right along there. I'll think of it. This is
Okay.
what happens sometimes. But a lot of people don't understand that the website, first of all, his libertarian philosophy was not permitted by the judge we mentioned at trial.
Mhm.
It was forbidden to be said that he was libertarian.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, she didn't want the jury to think, oh, well, he's an idealistic kid and, he's not what they were painting. And also that the site itself was built on the non-aggression principle, which is a libertarian core principle that, you can freely trade and do what you want as long as you don't hurt somebody else. That was a core principle of the site. And Ross has gone on to actually counsel people to get off drugs in prison. He has said that he didn't really understand the implications of what hard drugs do to people and that he regrets that. But he tried to make amends in prison. But the site itself, he was an idealist. And like many people, like you and I are probably, I mean, I consider myself idealistic. I'm sure you do too. And yeah. And so he wanted people to experience a free market where you were free to trade and the government wouldn't get in the way, as long as it didn't hurt other people, non-aggression. So I think a lot of people don't understand that's what it was. Of course, the media, the way they sensationalize everything. And but I just wanted to make that clear. So
Yes.
yeah.
No, that's a very salient point. The website was built on the libertarian principle of non-aggression, of free markets. And when you take the violence out of the drug trade, you take out not only you take out the violence, you essentially reduce it to a free market. And I think Silk Road, if my memory serves me correct, had like rating systems for the best people to buy from. So there's actually almost this like Amazon review type system where you're getting something that should be safer, because it's going through some levels of, yes, this is a good product or whatever. We're not advocating whether or not people should be doing these things, but if people are going to do it anyway, let's be real. Fentanyl is just about in everything these days, everything that's in powder. The war on drugs has been going on for nearly a century. It didn't work in Prohibition. It doesn't work today. The cartels keep getting richer and richer and richer because of this drug trade, this market. They don't want drugs to be legalized, in the same way that rum runners didn't want alcohol to be legalized. So there's a big argument to be made from a libertarian perspective that if we want to solve the drug use problem, number one, consenting adults should be able to do what they'd like to do, whether or not it destroys their lives. That, or that's a societal issue. That's a medical issue, of course. But also get the help that people need. They shouldn't be going to prison for using or abusing these drugs, just like alcohol. People don't get thrown in prison because they're abusing alcohol. They get help and they get treated to medical issue. And most drug use is predicated on social ills. It's more of a disease of the soul. So with all that said, I would like to talk to you a little bit about your organization, Mothers Against Cruel Sentencing. What is it about, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, of course, having dealt with Ross's sentence and seeing how totally unjust it was and how excessive, crazy, extensive it was. And then meeting so many people in the prisons who, and hearing their sentences that seemed so disproportionate to what they'd done, and the damage that being in prison does to children, to families. I just felt like, and also having grown up where there were hardly any life sentences given, where sentences were way shorter. And it just seems like it's just exploded into this crazy situation that's not unconstitutional. The Eighth Amendment of the Bill of Rights says cruel and unusual punishment is forbidden. And yet I think a life sentence, literally spending your whole life in a cage with every minute of your life controlled, is cruel. And Ross did a little experiment with that while he was in prison, where he went around and interviewed the different fellow prisoners and said, if you could choose between being, as your punishment, for a finite time, being tortured in a classic torture like flogging or pull out your fingernails or burning or anything that's, you can think of horrible things for a finite time, or have work at, fulfill your sentence for decades. Many of them are decades, or, or fulfill your sentence, however it is. Which would you pick? And 100% of them said, give me the torture, bring on the flogging. I'll take it to get through this. And to me, that proves that it's torture in there. And Ross does talk about some of the things that happen. And it's not a fun place. It's a very tough place. And not only the prisoners are harmed, and and some people say, well, do the crime, do the time, and all of that. Well, some sentences are way disproportionate, but their children, their families, the whole communities are hurt. And I feel like there's got to be a better way than the dungeon model. Essentially, you just throw somebody in a dungeon and that's where they stay. I think there's better ways, especially with nonviolent people who can pay restitution, can do community service, can be home with an ankle bracelet and be there for their kids. At least start there. I read, it's hard to get exact numbers, but I did read that almost 3,000 people are serving very long sentences, life-destroying sentences, or life for cannabis in the United States.
What are your thoughts on victimless crimes?
What?
What are your thoughts on victimless crimes?
Well, yeah, I mean, victimless crimes. Exactly. Victimless crimes, where you haven't hurt anyone, you've made a choice. Some choices aren't great. Now, one thing that Ross does say, and he went through this for almost 12 years in lots of different prisons, and another prisoner, Leonard Picard, they became friends in prison, but he was also serving a life sentence. Thankfully, has not got out. But they both say you have to have some prisons because there are people in there. Prisons are to protect us. That's what they're really for. And there are people in there who are dangerous people, that are killers, that are people that we have to be protected from, at least now. Maybe there's room for some, change and some growth there, but we need to be protected. But Ross says it's at least, he said, more than half, way more than half of the people he met could be safely and easily released with no problem. He said they're innocent, or they're reformed enough or whatever. So I want to call attention to this, because having met the people myself and also seen the children and how it's so harmful for them. Like, you see them come in in our case, their dad, they're so excited. They're wearing "I love my daddy" t-shirt, all of this, and they crawl over him in his lap, and they're just soaking him up. And then they have to leave, and they're shattered. They're crying. It's so heartbreaking to see it. They're suffering. And also it starts eroding the family, eroding the community. And it's for weed. I mean, it's too much. And so there's a Sentencing Reform Act was passed just to try to stop this. I think it was in the 70s, 1979, I believe, that says a sentence should be enough to get accomplish the reason you're being sentenced, but no longer than necessary. A lot of these sentences, including Ross's, was way longer than necessary. Ross would have never reoffended after a couple of months, never mind life. I mean, he'd be like, okay, forget that. And
it seems to me the U.S. prison system, I've heard it once said, it's designed to punish, not to reform. And we have about 1% of our entire population of 330 million people behind bars. I don't know if that's still accurate. Maybe it's higher. I don't know.
Too many.
Too many. And what you
hard to nail down. Exactly.
And what you said was really interesting, that the kids don't get to see their fathers as much. And one prison statistic is that 90% of violent criminals in prison are fatherless. So that self-perpetuating cycle, if you have a father who's willing to spend time with their kids, and they're in prison for 30 years because, I don't know, maybe they were smoking weed and they had a little bit too much on them. I know back here in the Florida Keys back in the day, it was real big in the cocaine cowboy days, where a lot of people around town served pretty hefty sentences for during that time. They're still around. They're well known. Some of them made some money. Some of them lost it all. But that doesn't mean that these are bad people. It doesn't mean they're violent people. It doesn't mean they can't be reformed. And quite frankly, it just tells me that the prison system and the U.S. legal system tends to, or does, punish people into subservience, essentially. So that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to break people's will or deter them from committing a crime with high sentencing. At least that's the way I see it.
Well, it doesn't, of course. I mean, then it's not
Right.
necessary.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Right.
And I mean, Ross had friends in there. One of whom I know his sister. We've talked. It was the third strike act under Clinton that he's serving life for a user amount of meth in his pocket, and he was an addict. That was so long ago. His daughter didn't get to have her dad around. Wow. Ross said he's a good guy. He's not a dangerous person. He's just one. I personally also know someone whose father was in Florida, same thing with crack. It's been, I don't know, decades. I think in that case, even the prosecutor, and I think maybe even the judge they can't seem to get him. I don't know. I haven't been in touch with that case. But it was so heartbreaking to know my friend, and that he didn't have a father growing up because of it. It's too much. It's just a lot of it's just too much. So I want to, I figure I've got a big mouth. I can be, I can get some attention. I can talk to people and maybe have people realize, wow, I didn't realize what's going on here. And it's not American. It's against our principles. It's against our Constitution. It's just, and that protects all of us, right? I mean, when you get sentences like Ross got for nonviolent first-time offender, that puts us all in peril. We all could be. There's a bunch of, I'm sure you're probably aware, I'm sure you are, the cryptocurrency people that are in
Still
prison.
behind bars. Yep.
Yeah. And they're peaceful people. They're peaceful innovators. And you're wasting their brains. You know, they're smart. Anybody who can do that, in my book, is very smart. Ross does not, it's not genetic. He doesn't get that skill from me. So I'm very, wow. I mean, I can't begin to imagine what it takes to really know how to build something in the crypto world and all of that.
Well, you certainly built a movement, and that definitely takes something that I think Ross got. I
Oh,
think that was hereditary.
No numbers, that's all. No tech.
You know, and even now looking to the future, I mean, we're also dealing with this whole Palantir pre-crime potentialities that now they're putting in AI to decide who could be the next potential domestic terrorist, or who could be, you know, whatever the case is. So we're entering into a judicial system and a police state that is very frightening. We've got people behind bars that for cannabis in places where cannabis is now legal. You know, what can people do to what is the next step? How can people support your mission? What can people do to try to reform these rules, to get clemency? Maybe they have somebody they know that needs clemency that they want to advocate for. You know, what would you recommend to some of our listeners that want to do something about this?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to, I realized I can't do this one myself. I couldn't before either. So I'm going to work with other groups that are already set up, getting something done in Washington, getting something done with law, helping with different cases. So I want to support those groups rather than I'm just going to do this, because I don't think I'm the right person. I can talk about it. And so I think spreading the word and have it become, people realize, yeah, a lot of dangerous people are let out and they shouldn't have been, and they end up killing people. But that kind of has been getting a lot of attention. But on the other side is there's peaceful people who are being caged for their whole lives, or most of their lives. The other thing that I thought was interesting with this judge and the whole libertarian thing, I want to say, is that she was suppressing Ross's philosophy. She said it was dangerous. It was dangerous.
Really?
That's the libertarian philosophy of, and she said it was dangerous. And, you know, he had to be put away for life because of it, because she didn't think he'd given it up, essentially.
So you're telling me that being a libertarian could get you a harsher sentence because of this very dangerous political philosophy, or at least that's what I would say. That this
if you get a judge like she is, thankfully she's no longer a judge. She's just a lawyer making lots of money, but she's not a judge, luckily. But there's plenty of judges that, you know, you're like, oh God, I got that judge. But yeah, I think that, you know, because libertarians are speaking out and they want freedom. And so that was definitely part of it, was that what Ross was saying, or people were saying on the site, and the principles of the site were threatening.
It made a lot of sense, and it subverted everything that they tried to clamp down on. Because once you have people accepting libertarianism as an ideology, then they see things differently, and it takes away the establishment's power and authority to enforce rules that are immoral to the rest of us. It makes them look bad, and they don't like looking bad.
No. So, yeah. So it has had a lot of impact on a lot of different levels. And now what do you do? Well, you know, the problem is if you do have someone fighting the law, it costs a lot of money. And that is like, for instance, Lauren Rodriguez, who's one of the samurai guy's wife. She's got tremendous debt now because of it. It's, you know, and she's one person, but I talked to her about it. But probably every one of them has a bunch of debt, and how it can ruin you just trying to stay out of jail, you know, and that doesn't seem right to me. Because the government has endless money. They just print more.
Right.
You know?
They've got a limited piggy bank. They want to deter people from trying. Did you ever get any pushback? Were there any people, any groups, or did anybody try to give you pushback on this or this case? Or was it mostly just the state?
Well, we got, I mean, in the press and media, There were a lot of lies. There were a lot of slurs. For one, for example, was Vanity Fair published that Ross had turned down a plea deal, which is a lie. I proved it with we went to the court and went to the prosecutors, and I have a piece of paper. No, he didn't. Very fast and loose with facts, so that can, if they feel like it, make you look really bad. I remember one time I had been interviewed, and then when I read what I supposedly had said, I'm like, I never said that. And I went back to listen to it, and they had taken one section and another section and put them together and said that's what I had said. Well, I guess I did, but I didn't say them within and so there's a lot of distortion. So I would say in that sense, I never had an organized group except the federal government in the Southern District of New York, the most powerful prosecutors on the planet.
I think that's where they took Maduro.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. So
Noriega, and what Maduro they took him. That's right. They did. Yeah. So So I can't think of any organized groups that were fighting. Ross was one person. I mean, it was a high profile case and everything, but we had a lot of support actually, and it was great. I think it really made a movement and made it a lot of noise. That I think that's the other thing I would say to people. Get a petition, you have to start making noise, and I know it's hard. Like I say, I have a big mouth, and a lot of people don't want to do that, but it's, you got to make noise, squeaky wheel, all that. So
they say you can't fall asleep with a fly in a room.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. I like that one. Yeah, I was like a little fly, but
This is Freedom Dollar, FUSD, the world's first privacy-focused stablecoin built on the Zano blockchain. Unlike traditional stablecoins, FUSD is decentralized, censorship-resistant, and private by default. Each FUSD is over-collateralized with Zano and pegged to the US dollar using a decentralized algorithm. There's no CEO, no company, no central authority. FUSD is governed entirely by open source code and community consensus. Anyone can run a market-making node to help maintain the peg and further decentralize the network. All collateral and peg data are transparently published and verifiable at freedomdollar.com. CBDCs and corporate stablecoins can be frozen, tracked, and censored. FUSD can't. Use FUSD to spend, save, or transfer stable value without giving up your freedom. Freedom Dollar, private, stable, unapologetically unbanked. freedomdollar.com.
So, but it is, the system's against you. It's like, for instance, bringing up the samurai guys again, they took a plea, and they were right to do it, because if you go to trial, they call it the trial tax. You will probably lose. You will probably get a much longer sentence. That's just it. I was told that over and over and over again. Ross was not offered a plea. He did not have the option. But so that's not right. We're supposed to have fair trials, and we all get a speedy trial and all of that. But our justice system and our court systems really need, some reform. They really do.
I like to say that the role of government, if it's fit to exist, is to protect life, liberty, and property. And when it fails to do that, then it's our job to cut it back or get rid of it, depending on one's philosophy. So if that is the role of government, then we have to reel them in and do what we can to either change the laws or fight for the people that were unjustly harmed. Can I ask you one question? What is Thomas Massey's role in helping to get Ross free? Did he have a role? I know he invited Ross to the house.
I know he did.
Yeah.
I'm going blank on the name. State of the Union. But he was always so supportive, and he was the first person who said this is an Eighth Amendment issue, And I'm
Yes.
like, you're right. I mean, I didn't quite realize it, and then he's always been so nice,
Mm,
not so helpful. And he went on Fox many times talking about Ross. And he's always, spoke about Ross in Congress.
mm,
He's been, and then he told me, well, so Trump wanted his endorsement,
mm.
and Trump goes, so he said he would, and Trump said, well, and be sure and put that kid in there, the one that got 100 years that libertarians love so much, put him in. So
Oh, wow.
Massey told me that he suggest and he Massey did put, and he's going to free Ross Ulbricht in his endorsement of Trump.
Wow.
And it's but but he's always been so sympathetic, and he told me the last time I saw him, he said,
Mm.
then I really think he's going to get out. And
Well,
that meant a lot to me, because at the time it was like, oh, I thought he would, but I didn't know if Trump would win. I didn't know if
mm,
I would try, Biden would. I didn't think there was much of a chance. And, because I was told that he would be taking whatever the DOJ wanted,
mm.
going by the book with them. And I always thought, well, Trump's a wild card. You never know what he'll do, so sure enough. So anyway, yeah. But Thomas Massey I consider really friend, supporter. He's great. I hope he wins. I
Me
hope he
too.
wins.
Me too. Lynn, this has been great. Is there anything we haven't spoken about, or any other thoughts or
Mm.
feelings before we wrap things up?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you all in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the Libertarian Convention. And I love being surrounded by liberty-loving people, best people,
Well,
And I think it's going to be great. And thank you, and thanks to everyone who. I know a lot of people voted essentially to free Ross. They didn't ever vote before, and they may not since. A lot of them said, I'm not voting again, but that was what I had to do. I wanted to do that. And also some of them didn't like Trump or whatever. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for showing him that it was the right thing, what he did with Ross. And, I'm so very grateful.
well, Lynn, thank you
So
so
is
much.
Ross, by the way. Ross is very grateful as well.
Well,
And
please.
he's, happy to be free. He's so happy to be free. He's, he goes, I said something to him, and he said, I could be happy in prison. Why would I be upset about that? He just doesn't, because he meditated, and he kept his spirits up, which is incredible. And he's like, I'm so happy to be free.
That's really amazing. I want to end on one story. And I like to tell this story a lot, and this just reminded me of this, so I'm gonna tell it. There was an interview with the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Jose Marte, Cuba, which is 90 miles south of me. I live in Key West, so we're closer to Havana than we are the nearest Walmart. And and there's a Libertarian Party there, and they get books and things snuck in, or they get 15 minutes of internet per week from the Swedish embassy. They're harassed. They get picked up, dropped in often a different part of town. They get their shoes taken. They're a very persecuted group. And when the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Cuba was asked, "Are you afraid of going to prison?" He said, "I'm not afraid of going to prison, because if I go to prison, I'll still be free in my mind." And that always stuck deeply with me. And I think Ross has that exact same spirit. So God bless him. And he's a fighter, and we're I don't have words to express how thankful we are for you and for Ross and his freedom. And we'll celebrate it next week. And we hope to see you there, and buy your tickets and come to the Libertarian National Convention so you can hear more from Lyn Ulbricht. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Stephen.